Alright. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Late Night Tips. In this week's episode we're going to look at the newest Octatrack update and we're going to see what can be done with trig conditions on the Octatrack. Let's get right into it. With the most recent OS update, Elektron has brought trig conditions to the Octatrack. I can't stress enough how happy I am with this development, and I think it solidifies Elektron's position as the champion of customer care. They have listened to our requests and they have managed to deliver the trig condition functionality not only for the newest Mark II, but also for the original Octatrack Mark I. And it happened after we have all given up hope that we're ever going to get this functionality on the Octatrack. I even recorded a video some time ago with a tutorial on how to emulate trig conditions using the LFOs on the Octatrack. This video is now unlisted because I don't want to mislead people who are looking for the original proper trig condition tutorial for the Octatrack, but it also gives me the opportunity to record one right now. Trig conditions are located in the microtiming menu that is accessible for each trig. You can access this menu by pressing a selected trig and then pressing the left or right buttons. You can still edit the microtiming by pressing left or right arrows and take advantage of the trig count functionality by pressing the up or down arrows. But most importantly, you can select a conditional lock for your trig by turning the level knob. I was really happy to find out that all conditions available on the analog series are also present here, and there was no downgrade of any type. Also, both trig conditions and the trig count functionalities work for the MIDI sequencer. Let's try and program a sequence for the Volca FM that will use all of these functionalities. First of all, I'm going to drop a trig on steps 5, 13, 14, 15, and 16. This is what it sounds like. Now I'm going to add a trig count function to step number 5. This is what it sounds like. And now let's make trigs 14, 15, and 16 conditional. I will use a fill condition for all three of them. You activate the fill function by pressing up or down buttons and a scale setup button. Up will activate the fill for as long as you're holding it, but down will schedule a fill mode for the next turnaround and will play it only once. Okay, so let's move on to the first unique feature of the Octatrack, which is probability plus a long one-shot sample. When it comes to playing longer spoken samples or ambient backgrounds, you can't go wrong with the Octatrack. Previously, we had to use the one-shot capability to trigger longer samples and prevent them from looping. You do that by pressing function and pressing on an active trig once again. It then turns yellow, which means it's armed. You press play and it's going to play once.
Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but I can explain all of that. I know you can explain all, so can I. It's not hard to come up with ex post facto justifications for why God would have done it.
The drawback is that if at any point of a live set, for example, you press stop or pause, all of your one-shot trigs will be disarmed and you would have to arm them again by pressing function and yes.
Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking,
but now we can use the first trig condition and we don't have to worry about it.
now I know what you're thinking. Now I know what you're thinking.
But there's actually more you can do with trig conditions. Because you can combine one-shot trigs with conditional locks, you can have your longer sample play once at a random point in your active pattern. Let's add a 14% probability to our one-shot sample and see what happens.
Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but I can explain all of that. I know you can explain all, so can I. It's not hard.
Now the cool thing is that if you want to play a full song using only one pattern, you can then have your sample play again just by rearming it, like that.
Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but I can explain all of that. I know you can explain all.
So that's the first unique application of trig conditions on the Octatrack. Let's now move on to the second one, taking advantage of MIDI Arpeggiator. That MIDI Arpeggiator in the sequencer section of the unit is unique to the Octatrack. You can send CV pitch information from the analog 4 and analog keys using the Arpeggiator to an analog synthesizer, but for the MIDI protocol, you have to go with the Octatrack. And with conditional locks, you can do something truly amazing. Let's parameter lock an Arpeggiator to step 13 of that sequence. Let's hear it. Now we can add a probability to this trig to make it a little bit less predictable. The Arpeggiator is the second unique application of conditional locks on the Octatrack, and the next two features will not be fully unique to the Octatrack, but they are nevertheless cool. Let's first take a look at triggering external effects using CC messages. So I have a separate MIDI track in here set to MIDI channel 1 to control my Line 6 M5 effects processor. I want to control effect on and off function, so I first set up my CC number in here and then activate that CC1 parameter by pressing the knob and function button. Now I can parameter lock the effect on whenever the Volca FM Arpeggiator plays, and it's going to be very simple. I'll drop a trig on step 13 of this track and parameter lock it to effect on. Then I will add a conditional lock called neighbor, which means that this effect will be triggered together with the ARP parameter lock on MIDI track 3. And then I will deactivate this effect on trig 5 so that the regular sequence is 100% dry. That's how awesome that neighbor functionality is for MIDI. And now let's move on to the final functionality, which is processing external signals. This functionality is also possible on the Analog 4 and the Analog RYTM, where you can additionally process audio using their analog filters. The main advantage of the Octatrack are 3 LFOs and a bigger variety of effects. I'm going to set up a through machine on track 5 and then select inputs A plus B and drop a trig to activate the machine. Now I'm going to put another trig on step 2 and parameter lock a filter setting and a flanger to this trig. And then I'll add a fill condition to this trig and use the micro timing option to move this trig as close as possible to the first step. Now I need to reset the effect, so I'm adding a parameter lock which cancels all the effects to that first trig, and I'm adding a negated fill condition so that it doesn't trigger when the fill mode is active. Okay, so that's it. Those are 4 cool applications of trig conditions on the Octatrack. It's really a big deal for me because it means that my entire studio is now integrated within the realm of Elektron workflow. And I'm extremely grateful to Elektron for including the Octatrack Mark I in this update and really supporting the community. And of course, as always, do let me know if you have any other tricks that you do with trig conditions on the Octatrack. I would love to see those. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing to catch more tutorials, more jams, and more opinions. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great night. Take care.